is session 1, which is lockdown gamification, teaching Shakespeare using digital breakouts. And the chair for that session is Frederica, and the author is Dr. Candice Livingston. So if you would like to stay in this session, it's fine. If you would like to move to room B, which is developing an online mathematics diagnostic tool, leveling the playing field, that is in the room B, you may move to that session. Thank you. Candice, if you're ready, you can start.
Hi, thanks.
Frederica, thanks. Frederica, you can take over from me now.
Thank you, Zina.
Najwa.
Oh, sorry, Najwa.
I know, voices are similar.
Yes, I was thinking about Zina. My apologies. Good morning, colleagues. I hope you are all well. Yes, welcome to this session of RITL. And we're going to be listening to Dr. Livingston, Candice Livingston. She's based in the education faculty in Wellington, actually, if I'm not mistaken, and she's the research coordinator for the faculty. Candice, I'm really looking forward to this paper about how you are teaching Shakespeare using breakaways and also actually a game to try and make students feel actually more comfortable and able to deal with that very, very difficult and sometimes very sort of English that one isn't used to anymore. So I want to hand over to you now.
Okay, thanks so much. I'm just going to switch my camera off now. We were asked to put it on for the first 5 minutes. So I'm just going to switch off and then I'll make my screen bigger. Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to present this paper to you. The paper I'm going to be the work I'm going to be speaking about today is using digital breakouts to teach Shakespeare during lockdown, and it draws on the concepts of gamification of learning. I just want to sketch the context quickly in which I teach. I am the research coordinator, but I do also teach on the undergraduate English program because I am actually an English teacher. I was for 13 years before I joined higher education. So that's where my passion lies. And this particular project was based in the FET Home Language 4th year group. So these are 4th year students who are going to become matric home language speakers. So there are very specific things that they have to learn how to do, specifically when teaching Shakespeare. And the text we worked with was Macbeth, and as I said, I'm just going to show you what I did in one part of the course to try and improve engagement during lockdown. Okay, so I'm not going to go into too much of the background of gamification of learning, but basically research has shown that we haven't really embraced the concept of gamification in higher education. But saying that, I think it might have changed during lockdown because people were forced to do so. There's not a lot of research out there about that. But yeah, there is a change that's happening. And researchers all agree that even before lockdown, it's very difficult to keep students' attention in the class. So gamification has been identified as one of the top 10 emerging technologies for higher education. And if you think about it, formal learning is actually like a game. Course requirements are like game objectives, policies are like rules, assignments are like quests, grades are like XP, and passing is winning. So if you think about it in that way, it's quite easy to make the jump to gamifying your learning. I designed my project around the ADDIE principle. ADDIE asks you to analyze your situation, design, develop, implement, and evaluate. And it is a very helpful model to use when designing learning pathways with gamification. But the thing that I relied on most in this research was the ARC model of motivation, because at the end of the day, it comes back down to, does the exercise that we have done motivate the students in all these different aspects? I don't have a lot of time, so I'm not going to go into each of them, but it's the ARC model for motivation, student motivation. Okay, so as I said, teaching Shakespeare requires quite a number of things that they need to learn. Not only do they have to come to grips with the Shakespearean language, they have to be able to analyze themes, know the meaning of what is being said, in essence, in a language that they themselves are not familiar with, as they themselves, most of them, are not even first language speakers. So there's always this groan when it comes to Shakespeare, especially when they have to read for close reading, for text, and reading for meaning. So basically, close reading of a Shakespearean text would require the three phases of close reading, which is the phase one is to read for general understanding, phase two to zoom in and out, looking at, text structure, vocabulary, point of view, perspective. And then phase three is zooming even further out and looking at the entire thing and what is actually being said in the what is being communicated here. So the kind of gamification that I used for motivation was digital breakouts. So I heard about this just while doing a bit of reading. The idea of breakout rooms has been something that has long been used. They've been around for a long time and has long been used to engage people in quests and problem solving. And I actually know of a lot of lecturers at CPUT who use breakout rooms to teach concepts and content in their subjects. But a digital breakout is something a little bit different. It has certain characteristics that come from game rooms, but obviously it's online, so it's a little bit different. And also, I'll speak about the purpose of the assignment will also determine the type of digital breakout that you use. So keeping in mind that the purpose of my assignment was to get the students to engage with a close reading of a Shakespearean text, I designed my digital breakout around that. So digital breakouts, you often have a narrative or a backstory that sets the scene. There are locks that need to be opened. There are puzzles and challenges that need to be solved, and these are clues that are left for the player. Once these challenges and puzzles are solved, then they provide clues or cues or codes that can be put into the locks, which can then open the lock. And obviously there's a learning objective that needs to be met. And finally, there needs to be a reward. Now, in gamification, the reward comes down to badges, it comes down to ranking, it comes down to who did it in the fastest time. I didn't get that far. I went with the idea where they say players complete a conventional escape room game and are rewarded by escaping the room, which oftentimes just is victory props. We escaped, we broke out. Wow, congratulations. But you'll be surprised how that in itself is a motivation, as I'll show from my findings. Okay, so what did I do? I created a digital breakout with a set of clues that's based on the students' understanding of a reading of Macbeth, specifically Act 2. And after each question, they had to answer. Give their answer, and then collect a number or a letter from the answer in order to unlock a lock at the end of each section. So, examples of the question types that were given in this digital breakout included a question like, to which cruel emperor does Macbeth compare himself? So that's a one-word answer, but they really have to look for it, because when you speak to them about their general knowledge around emperors and the sort of intertextual allusions to Roman or Greek mythology, they would talk about things like Julius Caesar or Nero. So Tarquin was a very specific cruel emperor, just like Nero, but he's not one that is generally known in today's society. So they would have to look for that in the text. And then the clue is the first number for the lock at the end of this section is the number of letters in this emperor's name. So what they would do is they'd fill in the name, and then they'd write down on the side, the first clue is the number 7. Then another example of a question is, give a synonym for red in the scene. So this might sound like a really easy question, but it's a scene, and a scene is a couple of pages long. They actually have to read the entire scene to look for a word that could mean red, and the word was incarnadine. And that is not a word that you would necessarily easily recognize as meaning red. So they would have to use their study notes, or, a lot of the Shakespearean texts come with notes on the side or are annotated. And so they would find the word, and then the clue there was the second letter of this word is the key to opening the lock. So it's N. So it would be the first is 7 and the second is N, and so on and so on. So you can really get them engaged in different ways, asking very simple one-word answer questions, or you can get them involved with longer questions, or you can get them involved with just thinking a little bit. So here's an example of something. Remember, it's all about engagement with the text and engagement with the activity. So in the scene, Macbeth compares the image of the dead king's body with a monster. And we know that monster to be Medusa, but in the text, Shakespeare never refers to her as Medusa. He refers to her as the Gorgon. And the question stated, look at this picture and the number of snakes in this image below, okay, because obviously it was below the text, less the number of letters in this person's name, give you the next number for your lock. So they had to sit and count all the snakes and then work out that it was a Gorgon, and then came to the conclusion that was the letter 8. Obviously, it wasn't easy because there were lots of debates about how many snakes were actually in the picture, and was it a Gorgon or was it the Weird Sisters, or who was, Shakespeare referring to? And then after trying many times, they then got the code and were able to open the lock. So then they would put the code together and they would be able to open a lock. And in the digital breakout, there would be some sort of hooray little video that was played to say, well done, and then move on to the next section. So I created about 6 sections that they had to work through, which forced them to have an in-depth reading of the act in order to break these codes. So the way that I did it was I used the codes version. Different people use different things, but I used codes where you had to unlock a lock. I used Google Forms, and I YouTubed how to do it. I had read about it. I had an idea of how it worked, but to be honest, I actually YouTubed how to do it. And it's many teachers at school level use this. So they're very keen to share their information. So that's what I did. I have put the link to the form in my presentation. So if anybody wants it, we can share the presentation afterwards. But these aren't very clear pictures, but I just want to show you what the form looks like. So the first page is, welcome to the digital breakout with all the instructions and explaining about the locks. Then these little interactive videos where they are told, well done, or good luck, or keep trying. Then it's the set of questions in each section. And then, of course, as they open each lock, there's a picture of a lock opening. And some of the findings that I had from this activity came down to reflections. Okay, so what we did was we had a portfolio. We have in the English department a portfolio that the students have to put together at the end of the year to showcase all of their work. Now, you can't exactly showcase your work on a digital breakout, so they had to write a reflection on the use of the digital breakout. And a lot of them, this is what a lot of them said. So the first thing that they spoke about was the fact that although it was challenging, they enjoyed it. There were a lot of comments about the motivation. I was eager to try and figure this out. I got excited when I managed to finish it. Although it was frustrating, I was happy at the end of the process, and things like that. They also spoke about their challenges, and their challenges related to things like not typing in the word correctly into the Google form, so the Google form wouldn't accept it. So, for example, I had told them categorically that they have to spell the word exactly like it is in the text, but they would write Weird Sisters instead of the Weird Sisters for the witches, and then Google form wouldn't accept it. So they had challenges around that, and they had a lot of them complained about the fact that they didn't have the necessary digital experience on how to use a Google form. But of course, my comeback is, well, now you do. And their other complaints were around time, how long it took them to read it and to do the exercise. And when I spoke to them afterwards and addressed their complaint about time, I said, well, that is the point, is that a close reading of a text actually does demand time. So, if you've taken your time to really engage with the text in order to find these answers to put them into the digital breakout, then you have engaged with the text, and you will never forget that Macduff called Macbeth called him Tarquin, or that the king's body looked like a gorgon, or that the three sisters were the ones that were responsible for the predictions, or that Fleance is Banquo's son, or whatever it was. And you know, this engagement that they said that they had was highlighted. There was no doubt about it. They could not do the assignment without deep engagement with the text. And what had happened further was that they all indicated as pre-service teachers that they were going to be using this in their classes in the future. Most of them were positive. I would even go so far as to say 95% of them said that they would include this in their classrooms when they themselves became teachers. So yeah, that is the end of my presentation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go back to the main room. And yeah, I welcome any questions that there may be.
Thank you so much, Candice. This was really very interesting. I saw on the chat, we've already got a disagreement on how many snakes were in the picture. So.
Yeah, true story.
Yes.
I must be honest with you, when I was putting the presentation together, the picture that I'd used in the digital breakout, I couldn't find it on the internet. So I downloaded the clearest picture I could find for the example. So yeah, there are lots of debates.
Colleagues, it's 19 minutes past, and the next session is starting in 5 minutes. So I think I can maybe allow 1 or maybe 2 questions maximum. I see there's a hand up. I can't see who it is.
Bronwyn.
Bronwyn, please go ahead.
Hi, Candice. That was fascinating. I want to get hold of a copy of Macbeth, and I want to ask you if I can play your game too. How long did it take you to design this, and when did you start?
Okay, so it takes forever, because not only do you have to analyze the text as a comprehension text and work out questions, then you have to work out the way that you ask the question so that it's a clue. And then you have to make sure that you are creating the codes as you go along. So the first time I did it, it took me forever. But I think that now that when you do it a couple of times, it does get easier. But yeah, it does take a long time. And I think that might be off-putting for a lot of people. I started using this particular breakout about 3 or 4 years ago. So I was using it before COVID even. But it was just interesting to me that it helped the students this time round just as much, if not more, with the engagement in the text than if I had have been with them face to face, because they would have done it in an online environment before anyway, if that makes sense. They didn't do it in class. They didn't do it face to face. Yeah.
Thank you.
I see there's a question from Jocelyn, and I think this will be the last question.
Good morning, Candice. Thank you very much. It was really very interesting. Like Bronwyn, I feel that I would want to start playing that now. You mentioned that you had this available to the students before lockdown as well as during. Did you find that there was a difference in maybe their enthusiasm for interacting with it before versus after or during lockdown? Because yeah, I just want to know, were they as interested before lockdown to do it?
No. Short answer, they definitely were more engaged with it during lockdown. And I think it was because there's an opportunity to do something different. In-class teaching is more demanding on them, I think. That sounds weird, but there's more class activities, there's more things that you work with them face to face. I mean, I haven't been able to do half of the developmental tasks that I did face to face online. It's just the reality of it. But when we were doing it face to face, I think the students moaned more about it, where they were more set up to work electronically and digitally now because of lockdown. They had computers, they had access to the internet. It wasn't that they had to go and sit in the library and do this. So I think in that respect, they moaned just about the time it took and not about the challenges, where the previous students definitely moaned about having to do it because of challenges around digital, having a computer or having access to the internet or so on.
If I may, a follow-up question then. I'm assuming that if you're putting this exercise out, that you feel that the learning would have been the same had they done this, in previous years as well. They would still get the same benefit out of the tool.
Yes, I think so. I haven't done this as a research project where I've compared the two groups. I've just looked at it from this group's perspective and what they said now in terms of online learning. I'm just speaking from experience when it comes to before lockdown. So I can't actually make a definitive statement about have they learned more or not. But I can tell you that the exercise in itself, whether it's during lockdown or not, improves engagement and motivation to engage with a difficult text like Shakespeare.
Thanks very much for that. The reason I'm asking is just that I have the same feeling that the tools are out there. They just never use them unless you somehow force them into it.
No, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Candice. And this was really, really interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
colleagues, we're at the end of this session. So I'm going to hand back to the administration. And thank you for attending this session. Bye.